So chapter 12 is all on the nervous tissue. It's the first chapter that we'll go through looking at the nervous system. The nervous system is one of the two organ systems that maintain internal coordination, the other being the endocrine system. So the endocrine system communicates throughout your body using hormones that are secreted into the blood, and so it uses your uses your circulatory system as its pathway around the body. The nervous system has its own pathway made of the cells that make up the nervous system to translate electrical and chemical signals to different parts of the body. There are two main divisions of your nervous system. You have the central nervous system made of your brain and spinal cord, shown here in purple. And then your peripheral nervous system is on the outside, or on the periphery. And those are the nerves that extend away from your spinal cord and go to different locations throughout your body. So in our little yellowy beige color. For your peripheral nervous systems, the two major parts of it are the nerve, which are a bundle of your nerve fibers. These are the axons that are part of your neuron cells. And a ganglion, which is a knot swelling in the nerve where there's a bunch of cell bodies, so they take up a little bit more space, creating that knot, where they're concentrated and there's a lot of connections between different nerves. Between different neurons, so between the cells themselves. Your peripheral nervous system is further divided into multiple divisions after that. So you have two divisions. You have your sensory and motor division. So here we have the central nervous system, just brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, a sensory division, as well as your motor division. Your sensory division, also called your afferent division, carries signals from receptors to your central nervous system. So they're going to move from the outside portions of your body in different locations around the body and take that information to your brain. The visceral sensory division takes sensory information from your internal organs or your viscera, so like heart, lung, stomach, and also take that information to the brain. Your motor division, also called the efferent division, so think E for exit, exiting out of your brain to go to different targets in the body. So your somatic motor division carries these signals from the brain to your different skeletal muscles. Your visceral motor division carries the signals to different glands as well as cardiac and smooth muscles. So the muscles that are on the inside or more internal structures of your body. So think somatic on the outside, viscerals on the inside. So we have sensory information going to the brain, so to the brain from our organs, to the brain from our muscles and skin. Motor division away from the brain, so away from the brain to the internal muscles, as well as your glands, as well as to your muscles, part of your skeletal muscles, telling them to contract. The last division in your peripheral nervous system under your visceral motor division is your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is a nervous system that you cannot consciously control, and there's two divisions for it. First one is your sympathetic division. The other one is your parasympathetic division. Both of these divisions have two completely opposite jobs. So your sympathetic division makes your body ready for some kind of action. So this is your fight or flight autonomic nervous system. So for your sympathetic division, getting body ready for action. So needing to shift your blood towards your skeletal muscles so that when you need to run away or fight, you have the nutrients so your muscles are able to contract and do that type of action. Also helps to accelerate your heartbeat as well as your respiration. So speeding up the heart, making sure that blood's flowing well, speeding up your breathing so that you're getting enough oxygen, and shifting the blood away from your digestive and urinary system. So they're no longer your priority in this type of action situation. So therefore, you're going to inhibit them, keep them from doing their job, because you don't want to be running away from, let's say, a predator of some sort, and you got to go to the bathroom. Think about that. Okay, so your other division is your parasympathetic division. It has the opposite effect, causing your body to calm down. So it slows your heart rate, so less blood flow. Also slows down your breathing to calm you down, so less need for oxygen because you're not trying to do stuff, you're just trying to relax your body. Helps to stimulate your digestive and urinary system, so it's going to shift blood away from your skeletal muscles towards your digestive and urinary system, so stimulating them to do their job. So breaking down the food you've eaten. This is partially why you feel all sleepy after a meal, as well as increasing your urinary system, so increase blood flow to your kidneys to create urine. This division also is active in some people when they're taking, for example, an exam. And before they're trying to take the exam, of course, you're nervous and your heart's racing, so your body's trying to calm you down, and so the parasympathetic division kicks in. And when it kicks in, you have that, for some reason, the sudden feeling like you got to go to the bathroom right before a test. It's because of this division kicking in, trying to calm you down, but also at the same time stimulating your digestive and urinary systems. Inside your nervous system, there are 3 functional classes of neurons. So going back to our 2 divisions of our nervous system, we have our central nervous system as well as our peripheral nervous system. So starting with our peripheral nervous system, we have our sensory or afferent neurons sending information to the central nervous system. So they receive some kind of sensory information from a receptor, sends it to your central nervous system. Inside your central nervous system, there is one cell that only is located inside your central nervous system, and that is your interneurons. And they're confined in that system. They create bridges between your sensory neurons and the next type of neuron, which is your motor neuron. So sending signals from your central nervous system out to your peripheral nervous system to target some type of an effector. So a muscle to contract, a gland to make a particular product. For some neural pathways, you actually don't have interneurons. It's a direct synaptic connection, so a target between cells, between your sensory afferent neuron and your motor efferent neuron. So totally skipping this step. So again, your interneurons are only located in your central nervous system, basically creating a bridge between the 2 types of neurons. So that's your text version of what I said. Some of your nerves that enter and exit your central nervous system will contain axons of both sensory and motor neurons, and that's called a mixed nerve, but they're still going in their particular direction. So it's just like your interstate has, for example, if it's a north-south interstate, the cars are still going in their 2 different directions. They're just on the same interstate. Okay, now moving on to the actual structure of a neuron themselves. So your neuron is more of a stellate type shape of cell. At the top end here, we have a dendrite. Their job is only to receive signals, and that's all they do. They receive signals from other neurons. Moving down, you have your neurosoma. So your neurosoma is your main cell body of your neuron. It's your control center, so it makes your proteins. It also helps to receive signals as well as to be able to send signals. So it'll receive all this information into the neurosoma, and then here at the axon hillock is where the decision is made to whether or not to send the signal down the next portion, which is your axon. So think of your axon as your signal highway, sending the message in the form of an electrical signal to the next neuron. Off of your axon, sometimes you can have what's called an axon collateral, which is kind of like an off branch off your signal highway, but still sending an electrical signal. At the far end near your target, your axon starts to branch off in the terminal arborization. So think arbor like branching off like a tree. So that's kind of like your side street. So eventually still sending this chemical signal to the target location, but now you're being a little bit more specific on where you're going. The last part of your neuron is your axon terminal, and this is at the very far end of your neuron. It's where that electrical signal is going to be converted into a chemical one, targeting your next cell. Because your neurosoma is not centrally located in the structure of majority of your neurons, the protein production, as well as production of other things that the cell needs, occurs in the neurosoma and has to be trafficked to their different locations. So specifically focusing on the axon has its own particular pathways for trafficking. This is called axonal transport. So it's a two-way passage for your proteins, your organelles, and other material either to be sent toward the far end towards your axon terminals or coming back from your axon terminals back toward your neurosoma. So there's two directions of transport. You have your anterior grade transport going down the axon away from your neurosoma, and then going backwards, going from your axon terminals and back towards your neurosoma is retrograde. So thinking retrograde, kind of like going backwards or going backwards in time, is something that's retro. So retrograde is going backwards, so going up your axon towards the neurosoma. It's able to do this transport through the cytoskeleton component called microtubules. So again, working as train tracks to traffic material inside your cell. The motor proteins kinesin and dynein help to carry materials along those tracks, so they'll bind to those microtubules and move them in a particular direction. So, for example, the kinesin works in anterior grade transport, so going away from your neurosoma. Dynein works in retrograde transport, going to your neurosoma. The speed of your axonal transport partially depends on which direction you're going in, as well as what you're doing. So for fast axonal transport, it includes both anterior grade and retrograde transport. For your fast axonal transport, again, this is mostly for some kind of functional thing. So going away from a neurosoma for our anterior grade transport, taking organelles, enzymes, synaptic vesicles, as well as small molecules, so stuff that was made in their neurosoma needing to get to another part of the cell, therefore needing to get there quickly so the cell can continue to function like it should. In the opposite case, your fast retrograde transport, anything that needs to be recycled. So earlier when we talked about the acetylcholine neurotransmitter, it's broken down by acetylcholine esterase. Those bits and pieces and parts are traveled back up to your neurosoma using fast retrograde transport. Then it's reassembled and then sent back down using fast anterior grade transport. Other things that use fast retrograde transport are different types of pathogens. So viruses, rabies, herpes also use this type of transport to get into your, to infect your nervous system. So with these pathogens, it actually allows them to get into your brain because they're using that transport up through your cells. Your other speed of axonal transport is slow axonal transport, and this is for some type of repair. So this type of slow axonal transport is going to always be retrograde, so materials being made in your neurosoma, therefore traffic down to the injury location, and therefore starting the whole building process. So trafficking things down, getting all those materials to that location, doing so in a nice, organized manner. So a little bit slower, but making sure that things are getting where they need to be for repair. The neurons aren't the only type of cell in your nervous system. You also have Neuroglia cells in your nervous system, and these cells help to improve the function of your neurons as well as protect them and care for your neurons. So there's 4 types of glia that are in your central nervous system. You have your oligodendrocytes, your ependymal cells, microglia, and astrocytes. So the job of your oligodendrocytes are to form myelin sheaths in your central nervous system. So inside your central nervous system to protect the neurons around the axons, as well as help with increasing the speed of transport in those cells. These oligodendrocytes, so thinking oligo many, has many arms that will branch out like dendrites. They'll branch off and start wrapping around those axons of those neurons to help create this myelin sheath. Another neuroglia is your ependymal cells. These cells line internal cavities of the brain. They help to make your cerebrospinal fluid. So they're located in your different ventricles. So these are some of the internal cavities of your brain. Next type of glial cell are microglial cell. Their name shows you what they kind of look like. They're very, very small. There's a ton of them. They wander around your central nervous system acting like an immune cell. And what they'll do is they'll phagocytize any kind of debris, any kind of damage to a neuron, and therefore helping to protect your brain from swelling, helping to get rid of anything kind of pathogen-wise to protect your brain. So something that kind of got through, shouldn't have, microglia help to take care of it. The last type of neuroglia are your astrocytes. They're actually the most abundant cell in your central nervous system. They have a bunch of jobs that they do, but what I want you to focus on is that they help create your blood-brain barrier. So your blood-brain barrier helps to protect things from getting into the brain. So making sure that you're, again, protecting the brain, making sure it's functioning. And it does so through these perivascular feet that will wrap around the capillary. So therefore, there's your blood portion. Wrapping around those capillaries, helping to prevent stuff that's inside your blood from escaping your capillaries and moving into your brain. Moving on to the peripheral nervous system. So the four that I mentioned earlier only work in our central nervous system. Now moving on to our peripheral nervous system. So our peripheral nervous system only has two types of neuroglial cells, and that's your Schwann cells, which do the job of the oligodendrocyte in the peripheral nervous system. So they create a myelin sheath, except for it's only one cell making one part of that myelin sheath. So instead of having many arms like the oligodendrocyte, that one cell just wraps around like a pig's in a blanket. So part of that little biscuit part for that, similar to that. So their job produces the myelin sheath, helping to increase the speed of transport of your electrical signal down your axon. The last one is your satellite cell. Not too much of function that we're going to focus on for this class, but they still help with the function of your peripheral nervous system. So here is a picture looking at some of your neuroglial cells in your central nervous system. So these big large cells are our regular tissue neurons. We have an astrocyte here, so these little green hand-looking things are the perivascular feet. So wrapping around the capillary, helping to block stuff that is inside your blood from getting into your brain. Making sure that stuff like oxygen and water also does get out. Your myelin sheaths in your central nervous system made up by the oligodendrocytes, so think oligo many, and it has many arms like a dendrocyte to extend out and make the portions of your myelin sheath around the axons of your neurons. Another glial cell are microglia. So again, they're kind of small dudes, but they kind of wander around and make sure that your brain is protected from any debris or pathogen. And last neuroglia cell here, the ependymal cell, making your cerebrospinal fluid inside of your empty chambers. Well, empty, but open chambers inside your brain, which are filled with your cerebrospinal fluid. So those are your ventricles. Focusing on the myelin that wraps around those axons or the nerve fibers. So that again is your myelin sheath produced by your oligodendrocytes in your central nervous system and the Schwann cells in your peripheral nervous system. Majority of your myelin sheaths are lipids, and with very little protein. It's actually made with the plasma membrane of these cells. So basically your plasma membrane is mostly lipid with a little bit of protein. So the production of creating this sheath is called myelination. So inside your brain, it actually doesn't just automatically start myelinating as when it starts developing. It starts during the process of fetal development, and it starts in your occipital cortex. So think occipital bone, same name, occipital cortex here in the back. So starting here, and it moves towards the front part of your brain, which is your prefrontal cortex. The process of myelination is completed in late adolescence, so thinking more so by the age of 26. So this is partially why teenagers do stupid stuff, because your prefrontal cortex, its job is to help to adjust your behavior to socially acceptable types of behavior. So when you are lacking that myelination, your speed of telling you, no, that's something stupid, you shouldn't do it, not fast enough to keep you from doing it. Okay, so your fat, again, being part of the lipids that make up your myelin sheath, is very important to developing your central nervous system properly. So here's just a picture of oligodendrocyte making the myelin sheath in your central nervous system. So here's the neurosoma part of the oligodendrocyte. So here's our nucleus and has your rest of your organelles. Then it makes these arm extensions to multiple axons and then starts wrapping around these axons, going in tighter and tighter sheaths to the point where there's almost no cytoplasm in these different layers. So squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. For your peripheral nervous system, again, it's the Schwann cell. So instead of having one cell myelinate multiple axons, you have one Schwann cell myelinating one axon. So it just makes one wrap around your axon. So as it's wrapping, it's squeezing out the cytoplasm. So ending up with mostly lipids here, just basically cell membrane and proteins, or wrapping, making multiple wrappings around your axon. So this helps to protect it as well as increases the speed, which I'll show you next. So all of this is wrapped in endoneurium, just another connective tissue protective wrapping like most of the stuff that's in your body. So what are these myelin sheaths? These myelin sheaths are segmented. So here showing the Schwann cell, Schwann cell, Schwann cell, Schwann cell. The gaps that are in between your Schwann cells is the same thing with the oligodendrocytes in your central nervous system. You'll have gaps in the myelin sheath. These gaps are called the nodes of Ranvier. What happens, instead of your electrical signal just simply traveling on your cell membrane on the outside surface of your cell, because of these myelin wrappings, instead of it just traveling along thinking like a wave at a football stadium where the crowd has to stand up and raise their hands and it takes forever to get all the way around the stadium, for your nodes of Ranvier, the signal actually jumps from node to node in a process called saltatory conduction. So that actually helps to speed up the trafficking. So sort of like, instead of the crowd standing up to send that wave signal around the stadium, it's like if you place a couple of cheerleaders down on the floor and you just had them jump from person to person. So instead of each individual person trying to stand up and send that wave down, it's just cheerleader, 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 cheerleader. And then it quickly goes around the stadium. So if a nerve fiber is not myelinated, so it doesn't have that myelin sheath with those multiple layers of plasma membrane wrapping around it, creating those nodes of Ranvier, they're called unmyelinated, but although they're unmyelinated, they're still protected some. So for example, in the peripheral nervous system, you have your Schwann cells. They have like little grooves where they make little pockets for the axons so that your cells at least will still be somewhat protected, but they don't have that nice tight wrapping of the plasma membrane to create that myelin sheath. So, affecting the speed of how you send a electrical signal down that axon depends on the diameter of the fiber. So, larger fibers have more surface area, and therefore it's a whole lot quicker to do so. And again, depending on if you have those myelin sheaths. So, myelin sheaths help to speed up that process of the electrical signal going down that axon. So reasons why that you have differences in speed for your signals. So you have slower signals in your gastrointestinal tract where you're just taking your time to allow the food to break up. You're taking your time to allow those cells in your intestines to absorb the nutrients from your food that it's been broken down. So there's not much of a rush for getting your food through your digestive tract. However, for your skeletal muscles, in order to make quick change movements for balance, or as well as doing some kind of body movement, making sure that your muscles are moving your body in a way that your brain is commanding it to do so.